We'd like to thank our keynote address speaker, Bishop Jean Lafitte, for that wonderful presentation of especially the call for this charter of the rights of the family, and with the background also of the challenges that we are faced with now in the contemporary times, which will, I think now, in our next speaker, will also be made more explicit in the context now of of the Asian context, and more particularly in the Philippine setting, to give us the topic or a insight into the implementation of the Charter of Rights of the Family vis-a-vis the UN and Asian setting, which is the Philippines. We would like to call on our next speaker, who is by profession an attorney, a legal, from the legal point of view. We'd like to hear his reflections on how this Charter of Rights of the Family, which is a gift from the church to us, to guide us precisely in maintaining, in trying to develop the values of the family for the common good. We would like to ask our dear next speaker to shed light on how this can be implemented in the context of the UN and the Asian setting. My dear friends, let us welcome Attorney Luisito V. Liban, who is the partner of SYCIP, Salazar Hernandez, and Gatmaitan, or SYCIP Law. Let us give him a round of applause. Attorney Luisito V. Liban.
His Excellency, Most Reverend Jean Lafitte, His Excellency, Most Reverend Socrates Villegas, His Excellency, Most Reverend Gabriel Reyes, other excellencies, bishops from different parts of Asia and the Philippines, Ambassador Henrietta de Villa, members of the clergy, government officials, fellow servants of the Lord, dear guests. I've been asked to give a reaction to the message, wonderful message of Bishop Lafitte. But as a lawyer needing absolution, I think the only proper response is to say amen. My only problem is that I have been given 30 minutes to speak about something, and I've decided to make a comparative study, though superficial because of the limited time, between the Charter of the Rights of the Family and the laws of nation, represented by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Philippine laws. Now, let me start with a story. Two married men were talking to each other. The first guy asked his friend, "Do you know what it means when you come home to a little affection, a little gentleness, a little understanding, a little sympathy?" The friend paused and said, "Of course, I do. It only means that you are in the wrong house." Sadly, that's the probably current state of affairs in the family. The family is no longer what it used to be years ago. And initiatives from the Catholic Church, such as this conference, and the pronouncements coming from Mother Church, are most welcome, especially in this difficult moment in the life of the family. Now, from the very beginning, even before nations were born, even before the idea of organized government was ever conceived, in fact, even before the very first legislature was convened, there has been natural law. Bishop Lafitte mentioned this in great length earlier. And what is natural law? Well, actually, it consists of all the evident truths or moral truths based on right reason and human nature, derived from God and grounded in God. It is there from the beginning of time and space because it is a creation of God. As ancient as the physical laws, like the law on gravity. Now, what does the doctors of the church have to say about natural law? Let's read these statements from St. Thomas Aquinas. He says that God's law is imprinted upon us. The light of natural reason, whereby we discern what is good and what is evil, is nothing else than an imprint on us of the divine light. Now, you might say that that is only the opinion of the church. But actually, even the pagans, the secular people, probably even the atheists, believe that there is such a thing as natural law. Consider these statements from the great Roman philosopher Cicero. He says, "True law is right reason in agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting. It summons to duty by its commands and averts from wrongdoing by its prohibitions." Now, just recently, the Supreme Court of the Philippines, as you may know, released its landmark decision in the case involving the reproductive health law. And in that particular decision, the Supreme Court acknowledged the precedence and importance and existence of natural law. It says, this is in the case of Imbong versus Ochoa. "It is a universally accepted principle that every human being enjoys the right to life. Even if not formally established, the right to life, being grounded on natural law, is inherent and therefore not a creation of or dependent upon a particular law, custom, or belief. It precedes and transcends any authority or the laws of man." Now, since natural law originates from God, then it must be that moral truths, natural law itself, must be the measure of what is good and right. And in this connection, the Charter of the Rights of the Family is based on natural law. Therefore, it should be the standard against which all civil laws of man relating to family should be measured. Now, let me walk you through the different salient provisions of the Charter, and then we will compare those provisions with those of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which represent international law. And in the local setting, the Philippine Constitution, the Family Code, and related legislations on family and marriage. What does the Charter, CRF stands for Charter of the Rights of the Family. UDHR means Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Constitution is the Philippine Constitution. Family Code is the Philippine Family Code. What does the CRF state with regard to the role and importance of the family? According to the Charter, the family is a community of love and solidarity, uniquely suited to teach and transmit cultural, ethical, social, spiritual, and religious values. Now compare this to the secular definition under the Declaration on Human Rights. It says the family is a natural and fundamental group of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. Do you perceive the difference? The difference is very obvious. The Charter speaks of relationship, speaks of the values present in the family. On the other hand, the Declaration speaks only of the family as a unit of society, so impersonal. What about our Philippine Constitution? It says that the Constitution recognizes the Filipino family as the foundation of the nation, better than the definition under the Declaration on Human Rights, but still not focusing on relationship and values. What about family code, which implements our Constitution? It says the family, being the foundation of the nation, is the basic social institution which public policy cherishes and protects. So it's the same as the Constitution, except that it mentions two different aspects with regard to state protection and the state being able to cherish it. What about the role and importance of the family with regard to the thinking of the Supreme Court? In the case of Imbong versus Ochoa, the Supreme Court said to insist on a rule that interferes with establishment of conjugal and family life would result in the violation of one's privacy with respect to his family. It would be dismissive of the unique and strongly held family tradition of maintaining close family ties and violative of the recognition that the state affords couples entering into the special contract of marriage as one unit in forming the foundation of the family and society. Now, this is very important because the court recognizes that the family, particularly the Filipino family, has traditions unique to us, traditions which are sacred and traditions which must be respected by the state. It also recognizes one important aspect of family life, and that is the right to privacy. The state must keep out of our bedrooms. The state must keep out of our relationship with one another as members of the family. Now, the Charter defines marriage as the intimate union of life in complementarity between man and woman, which is constituted in the freely contracted and publicly expressed indissoluble bond of matrimony and is open to the transmission of life. Key words and phrases are the following: complementarity between a man and a woman. As we know, once the two marry, they become one. They complement each other. They're not separate individuals anymore as the secular world would see them. And number two, indissoluble bond of matrimony. It cannot be destroyed, cannot be severed or separated, because as our faith says that what God has put together, let no man put asunder. And the most important is the ability to transmit life with the grace of the Lord. Now, compare this to the Declaration on Human Rights. Actually, there's no base for comparison because it does not define marriage at all. And I think this is for a political reason, to keep open the possibility of a state coming up with a definition different or opposite to that in the Charter. What about our Philippine Constitution? It defines marriage as an inviolable social institution and is the foundation of the family, which shall be protected by the state, better than the Declaration on Human Rights. What about the family code? It says that marriage is a special contract of permanent union between man and a woman. Very good. It tracks almost the language of the Charter, entered into in accordance with law for the establishment of conjugal and family life. It is the foundation of the family and an inviolable social institution whose nature, consequences, and incidents are governed by law. I think the important phrase here is permanent union between man and a woman. not between man and another man or a woman with another woman. What about the Supreme Court in the Imbong versus Ochoa case? It defines marriage in a very practical way. It says, marriage is a coming together for better or for worse, hopefully enduring. Our court is not as optimistic as the church, and intimate to the degree of being sacred. That's the Supreme Court. What about the right to life? What does the Charter say? It says human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. It says abortion is considered as a direct violation of the fundamental right to life of the human being. Respect for the dignity of the human life excludes human being, excludes all experimental manipulation or exploitation of the human embryo. What about international law? It says everyone has a right to life, liberty, and security of person. However, it does not state that an unborn child has the right to life. Our Constitution is more close to the spirit of the Charter. It says that the state shall equally protect the life of the mother and the life of the unborn from conception. And here I'd like to acknowledge the contribution to this provision by our own Bishop Bacani. I saw him earlier. What about the Supreme Court? In the recently released decision in the reproductive health law, court says, in all, whether it be taken from plain meaning or understood under medical parlance, and more importantly, following the intention of the framers of the Constitution, the undeniable conclusion is that a zygote is a human organism, and that the life of a new human being commences at a scientifically well-defined moment of conception, that is, upon fertilization. And in coming up with this decision, the Supreme Court generously quoted and cited statements of our own Bishop Bacani during the Constitutional Convention deliberation. Let's talk about the rights of the parents with respect to the education of the children under the Charter. There's a long list of rights of the parents. It says, parents shall have the right to educate their children in conformity with their moral and religious convictions, taking into account the cultural traditions of the family, which favor the good and the dignity of the child. It adds that parents have the right to freely choose schools or other means necessary to educate their children in keeping with their convictions. Parents shall also have the right to ensure that their children are not compelled to attend classes which are not in agreement with their own moral and religious convictions. In particular, sex education is a basic right of the parents and must always be carried out under the close supervision, whether at home or in educational centers chosen and controlled by them. Now, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that parents shall have the prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. Now, note that such statement is obviously too general and too vague, but at least there is something there that confirms the precedence and superiority of the right of the parents over that of the state. It says prior right. Now, our Constitution says that the natural and primary right and duty of parents in the rearing of the youth for civic efficiency and development of moral character shall receive the support of government. Now, this was one of the provisions we cited during the arguments before the Supreme Court. And this particular provision was cited by the Supreme Court in affirming the rights of parents. According to the Supreme Court, like the 1973 Constitution and the 1935 Constitution, The 1987 Constitution affirms the state recognition of the invaluable role of parents in preparing the youth to become productive members of society. Notably, it places more importance on the role of parents in the development of the children by recognizing that said role shall be primary. That is, that the right of parents in upbringing the youth is superior to that of the state. Now, if you remember, there is a provision in the RH law which compels children in public schools to undergo sex education. That was one of the provisions we attacked before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did not actually rule on the validity or invalidity of that provision because according to the Supreme Court, it is premature for them to make a ruling because under the law, the Department of Education will still have to come up with a curriculum on sex education undertaken with the cooperation and active participation of parents, among others. So there is no judgment yet on whether that particular provision is valid or invalid. But the point is, the court left open the door for possible question against any sex education that violates our traditions, that violates the rights of parents to rear their children according to their religious beliefs. What about the rights of the family? The Charter says the family has a right to assistance by society in the bearing and rearing of children. It has the right to expect that the means of social communication will be positive instruments for the building of society and will reinforce the fundamental values of the family. At the same time, the family has a right to be adequately protected, especially with regard to the youngest members from the negative effects and misuse of mass media. Now, in this particular point, with regard to mass media, you will recall that the Congress came out with a law against cybercrime. And there are provisions that would protect our children from sexual exploitation and also from pornography. So that is a local law that seems to implement this aspect of the Charter. It says also under the Charter that every family shall have the right to live freely its own domestic religious life under the guidance of the parents. Now, in comparison, the Declaration on Human Rights says that the family is entitled to protection by society and the state. General statement, no specifics, no details. The message being that we leave it to the states to do that. Our Constitution, however, is more precise and more detailed. It says, the state recognizes the sanctity of family life and shall protect and strengthen the family as a basic autonomous social institution. It also provided that the family shall have the right to a family living wage and income. In the Philippines, there is a law on minimum wage. And that is, I think, a concrete way of implementing the aspiration of the Charter with regard to providing family a living wage. But of course, the minimum wage is far less than what is required to keep body and soul together. It says also, the Charter, that the family has the right to participate, the Constitution, I'm sorry, the family has the right to participate in the planning and implementation of policies and programs that affect them. The RH law actually grants and recognizes that this particular right when it allows the participation and involvement of parents in the formulation of the curriculum for sex education. The good bishop made a lengthy presentation about the attacks that the family right now confronts at this day and age. Yes, our family is under attack from different forces, from liberal feminists, from the relativists, from the equal opportunists, from hedonists, did I mention that already? And the worst, sometimes the attack or attacks come from government itself, particularly in the halls of Congress. Congress is now deliberating, at least a bill has been filed, to allow for divorce. As you know, the Philippines is probably one or two countries that have no divorce law yet. I understand from my friend Frank Padilla that the other state is the Vatican. Problem is that there are no married couples in the Vatican, so that leaves the Philippines as the only standing state against divorce. So, what is expected of us? Well, first, the forces are actually driven by one particular motivation, and that is their desire to place their personal wants and likes above God's plan for us, for marriage and family. But the good thing is that we have legislations in the Philippines at least, which we can use actually to avert, to fight off, to prevent the continuing onslaughts against family and marriage. So what are we supposed to do? First, we should educate ourselves regarding the legislation that protect family and marriage. I've mentioned some of them. Why? Remember the statement of Erasmus? He said that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed is king. If you notice, and this was also peripherally mentioned by Bishop Lafee, the anti-life forces are actually few, much less than all of us. After all, there are 80% of our population are supposed to be Catholics. The problem is education. Many of us, most of us are not aware of our faith. More unfortunate, many of us, probably majority of us, are not aware of our rights under the law. So we have to educate ourselves so that we will be adequately equipped in fighting the attacks of the enemy. Number two, we should be vigilant in defending the family against these assaults. Every step of the way, we should be counted. We should stand up and fight the good fight and be counted, especially as we face these difficult challenges ahead of us. We should be at the forefront of the advocacy to preserve the family as a sacred institution. Now, let me end by quoting again this statement from Edmund Burke. He says that the only thing necessary for evil, for the triumph of evil, is for good men to do nothing. In the fight against the RH law, the other side would come out with surveys showing allegedly that majority of the population are for the RH law. But when we did our own local surveys in the church, and after presenting the issues and the content of the RH law, then RH bill, we discovered that a great majority actually were against specific provisions of the law. So it all boils down to knowing and awareness and standing up and being counted in this great fight at this modern age. With the Mother Church leading us, I think we should all rally together so that God's plan for us, for our family, shall come to pass. Thank you.